with our artists after that journey around the globe. The Earth turned one time actually while we did this, and we covered a lot of ground. So thank you so much. So let's go on right away to our panel, and I think we will hear, from Israel and from Greece. Avra, are you there?
I'm here. Hi, Frank. Hi, everybody.
Hi there. And Ruth, are you there?
There. I mean, you're already 23 hours on.
Yes, it's quite amazing. I have no idea how this happened. But let's first say where you are. Avra, where are you and what time is it?
I'm in Greece. I'm in actually a beach resort in the north of Greece, and it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 o'clock in the afternoon. Ruth, where are you?
I am actually in a small village very close to Tel Aviv, and here it is 2 p.m. in the afternoon.
Okay, Mangai, welcome also to our program. Where are you at the moment?
Right now in Bangalore, but I live in Chennai.
You're in Bangalore right now. Krishna, where are you?
I'm also from Chennai now.
Great. And Sadhashi, where are you?
Chennai.
And that is?
Nadu, south of India.
South of India. Wonderful. Well, it is one of the great pleasures that, that we have those groups together of artists, thinkers. And this is our last session. So it's a very important one actually for us. And it feels just like we started an hour ago, but it is really true. It's been so inspiring, but it's a great closing session. And so I would maybe start with our Indian artists to welcome them. Ponni, where are you now at the moment?
I'm joining you from Batiklo in eastern Sri Lanka.
In eastern Sri Lanka, amazing the territory that has been covered, by Tanvi and Abhishek in the curation of our Indian collaborators. So maybe we just go through you as an artist. You tell maybe a little bit who you are, introduce yourself, and let's start with Mangai.
Yeah, I'm Mangai, which is a name I gave myself, which means woman in Tamil. And our theatre group is called Marapachi. And it has been part of Tamil Nadu theatre scene with primarily gender and sexuality as our major focus. So our plays range from documenting our local histories and to taking on issues that are very urgent. We also believe in theatre being very inclusive. So for many, many years now, our members range from different caste, gender, and sexuality. So,
and you are a director, playwright, or a performer?
I'm primarily a director now, and our plays are usually evolved through workshop. But of course, there are certain starting points, which I call them as starting points. But we begin our work with that, which is how we began a play almost around, I think, last June, during the lockdown, when we were just getting used to this whole new normal that everybody is talking about. So initially it was just, can I move on?
Yeah, no, let's ask Krishna, introduce yourself and what you do in the field of theater.
Hi, my name is Krishna. I'm from Chennai. I'm currently doing my master's in English in Stella Maris College. I've been working with theater for the past 2 years with different theater groups, and in this production, I'm doing the technical aspect and closed captioning.
Mm-hmm. Ponni.
Hi, my name is Ponni. I'm an activist, historian, researcher, and actor. I'm based out of eastern Sri Lanka right now. I'm originally from Madras. I perform in this play along with 3 other actors. Today, you'll see just a small excerpt of just me performing.
Mm-hmm. Sadhashi.
Yeah, I'm from Chennai, and I have been primarily a Bharatanatyam dancer, classical Indian dancer. And I have always been enthralled by theater and have recently just actually during the lockdown started working with Mangai on her theater work. And I worked with her on this particular play that we will see an excerpt from with the sound and the movement that we had in between.
I suggest, since we have limited time, if we have the 20 minutes of, maybe we go directly in the reading, and if we have time left afterwards, we talk. Mangai, how about you start? And
yeah, I just want to kind of place it in the context. Because I think, I mean, apart from the losses and disasters that were surrounding us, I think we were also facing the impunity of the state in many ways that I've been hearing many of the other artists addressing, whether it is migrant workers, livelihood issues. And along with that, also, when people say stay at home, is home a safe space? But I think the starting point was Maya Angelou's "We Wear the Mask," where she says, "We wear the mask that grins and lies," and ask these questions. And you will see that in closed caption. So we began with that because it coincided with Black Lives Matter and police atrocity, coincided with the custodial murder in Tamil Nadu of a father and son. So that was, I think, the trigger that really generated that. So it is the mask, the laugh, and I can't breathe, which really became the crucial aspect. So like Krishna has put it up on chat, if people can really switch on your closed caption, and those of us on Zoom, if we can have our audio and video off just for the duration of that 5 minutes. And Ponni.
உலகம் ஏன் எமது உண்மை அறிய வேண்டும்? எமது கண்ணீரும் பெருமூச்சும் வேண்டாம். நாம் முகமுடி அணிந்திருக்கும் போது மட்டும் அவர் நம்மை பார்க்கட்டும். நாங்கள் முகமுடி அணிந்திருக்கிறோம். அது எதையும் காட்டாது. நான் கருப்பா, சிவப்பா, ஆனா, பெண்ணா, முதியவளா, யுவதியா, எதையும் காட்டாது. சிரிப்பு காது வரை நீளுகிறது. கண்ணீர் கண்களில் எழும்பி கண்ணம், கழுத்து, மார்பு, வயிறு என கால் வரை ஒழுகுகிறது. ஆனால் அது எதையும் காட்டாது. நாங்கள் முகமுடி அணிந்திருக்கிறோம். வீட்டு போங்க. அங்கதான் நீங்க சேஃப். குடும்பத்தோட இருங்க. அதுதான் உங்களுக்கு பாதுகாப்பு. கண்டமே வீட்டுல தானே. என் வீட்டுல என் குடும்பத்தார் என்ன நானா பார்த்ததும் இல்ல, இருக்கவும் விட்டதில்லை. அதுக்கு மேல அவங்களோட எல்லா இழவையும் ஏன் மேல, இந்த உடம்பு மேலதானே கொட்டுவாங்க. கிடைச்ச கொஞ்ச நஞ்ச நிம்மதி வெளியே போனப்பதான். படிக்க, வேலை பார்க்க. ஆனா இப்போ பாசம் காட்டுறேன்னு சொல்லி மூச்சு விட அதை விட மிஞ்சினதெல்லாம் கட்டுப்பாடு. மூச்சு முற்ற கட்டுப்பாடு. இதுல பசி வேற. கொரோனா கொல்லுதோ இல்லையோ, பசி நம்மள கொல்லும். சிரிச்சு மூச்சு விட முடியலங்க. I can't breathe. சிரிச்சு சிரிப்பு வருது.
Thank you. So this was a live caption a performance, and so tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, like I said, we began with the Black Lives Matter, but we had to immediately address things that were happening around us. But soon we realized that this Zoom, which seems to connect us across continents, is not actually equally accessible to people. So, the issues of accessibility, and for the first time, because you're not rehearsing in a common space, you were literally intruding into the private spaces of many homes. And also, especially our group, which has this very great mix of genders and caste and various income groups, I would call it intrusion. So those were some of the questions. But then we decided to perform live online for whatever it is worth, because I think Ponni and Sadhashi actors can actually vouch for the kind of experience which really made us stick to going live online. Ponni?
Yeah, I think for us, definitely the process of evolving the play reaffirmed our faith in the power of theatre. We were happy to be doing warm-up, even if it was in our respective homes, but with one another. We were happy to be creating something together and to constantly have the opportunity to do so in rehearsal. And we'd like to believe that there was a difference when audiences watched the play live, like all of you just did when we are actually performing, and that it was different when they watched it as a recorded video at a later time. But we've had different responses on this subject. We're not sure, but definitely it has been cathartic and so many different responses. And the play has been an integral part of ongoing big socio-political campaigns in the country. We opened with the If We Do Not Rise campaign, which is a national level campaign run by the women's movement in India against anti-democratic state actions. And so we're very happy to have been contributing to all of that, even during the time of the pandemic.
Yeah.
So quite something. So you most probably also reached a larger audience than perhaps you would have done if you had done it locally in a place, in a traditional setting of a theater.
Also, yeah, and curiously, because of the closed caption, we could actually reach national and international audience, which was really, I mean, surprising for us initially, but I think that was made possible with closed caption. Even at the national level, working in just Tamil as a language might not have really reached, but now there was that possibility. But with a lot of glitches, as you now saw, I mean, Zoom takes only up to a particular pitch. So that was there. But I think the second wave, we are going through a different phase. But we have members in our group, trans women community, which has opened up trans kitchens and feeding the people during the lockdown. And we are very happy about it. We would like to really dedicate this event to two of our artists, and I request Sadhashi and Krishna to present the dedication.
Comrade Ganesh, who was one of the earliest volunteers in Chennai Kalekuru, with which Mangai began her theatre work in the early 80s, was an auto driver. He was a proficient percussionist and a resourceful actor. Life was difficult for him. Mere survival proved hard. Personal life, too, did not offer much support. Still, he remained an auto driver and an artist till the whole pandemic began. We lost him to comorbidities, including poverty and lack of care, on the 4th of May, 2021.
Muthamurthy, a musician, singer, actor, set and props designer. Truly a multifaceted young man. He, at 32, lost his life by suicide earlier this year. The existing systematic denial of space and language for mental health concerns, lack of robust systems of collective social care for one another, which was all made much worse by the pandemic, has resulted in us losing a fellow artist, a loss that can never be forgotten.
Yeah.
We cherish their memory and wish life could have been more compassionate to them and to all beings inhabiting this universe.
Yeah, today we have just had another suicide by a trans woman in Kerala who was really in the forefront of the movement by suicide. So that is
Today?
kind of yeah, just today morning. So I think it's going to be a continuing struggle and survival, and I hope this level of affective solidarity that this forum, this platform has created will help us see through. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mangai and Krishna and Sadhashi. This was quite a Ponni, quite moving and important contribution. Thank you so very, very much to be part of that chorus, and I hope you will have time to listen in. Now let's move to Ruth. You're the next on our agenda. Ruth, where are you? What's going on? What have you planned for us?
So I'm now in our studio, the studio of our theater group, and our it's local tales. So we will try to tell you today two local tales. And actually, Frank, when you approached me and you asked me to share some reading, then I thought that I can't really deal directly with the corona these days, and because in my mind it's the cruelty of the nature and the cruelty of human beings is very much mixed, and very much like Mangai talked about now. I really identify with it, and so I thought that we could share with you two stories that deal with situations of isolation, of being in impossible conditions, of struggle of life and death. And actually, both stories we performed in Delhi, in India in 2008. So I thought it would be a tribute for this amazing project. The first, so I will read one story, and then two actors of my theater group would perform a short piece from another story. Good, okay. So shall I read the first one?
Let's go. Mm-hmm.
Then we will see if we have more time for talking. So this story is, it's called Amos. It was written Israeli, and the protagonist of the story is a field mouse that is stuck in a system of irrigation pipes in the field and is fighting against the capricious forces of nature. It is hot and humid in our coastal plain, and in July and August, a blurry haze hovers over the fields, sticky and warm as if caught between the Carmel Ridge and the sea. Our field workers are always ready for every effort that can secure better crops. Any living creatures inhabiting the fields are viewed as crop-reducing enemies. From their point of view, Amos, the field mouse, was a criminal pest destined to be exterminated. From Amos's viewpoint, they were the great field mammals, the titans of the lot, the ground plowers and the water carriers who knew how to make peanuts, potatoes, and cotton grow in dense, organized rows. The last encounter began when they came to connect the irrigation pipes and got stuck with their John Deere tractor, his barrow. Amos was an admirer of tractors and technology. They really know they're in America, how to design those machines. A prolonging pipe of 6 meters was left open. Amos was curious. He violated the third rule of survival. A pipe is a cylindrical trap and entered the opening of the pipe. This was a thoughtless, stupid act. The end of the pipe was suddenly raised and it was quickly attached to the gaping mouth of it. Survival rule 5. When in trouble, forget all the shitty survival rules and act decisively, relying only on your instincts. But it was too late. Horrible darkness fell upon the aluminum tunnel. A final locking click was heard. You have been trapped, Amos. To the plug, to the distant plug of the far end of the pipeline, Amos knew the procedures. In order to prevent the water sprinklers from being clogged, they always rinse the pipelines at 6 p.m. so that the last plug must. From there, his redemption was sure to come. Thus, Amos, a rational field mouse, started his emergency sprint. He ran and ran, and exactly as he promised himself, after 5 steps, light will be revealed. This was a violent, blind collision with the plug. Against all probability, it was not hung as usual on the last water sprinkler, but stuck in its place, blocking the last escape opening, as if saying, this is the end of the road, my dear. This is the end of the road. The time it appeared was 1 p.m., a scorching time of day. The aluminum walls perfectly transmitted every degree of summer heat. At this stage, hallucinations whirled his wise head. In one of them, he decided that if he concentrated all his willpower into a penetrating ray of thought and focused his gaze at one point of the pipe, he could drill a hole in it. The last desperate idea was astoundingly mad. The last idea was to gnaw at the aluminum, to bleedingly gnaw at the aluminum. Amos dared to gnaw at an edge of a crack. As a metal artisan, he widened the crack into a slit of 21 millimeters. An enormous wave of energy was arousing him to rush forward for the completing of the knowing at the rip of the light that was almost wide enough to make escape possible. 1 minute to freedom, the bell of life rang in him. Only that day, the field worker wanted to get home early, so he turned the water taps on at 5 o'clock instead of at 6. There was an interval, like an empty bar of musical note. Then Amos heard the water screaming, pouncing from the direction of the main faucet, and with a sinking heart, he knew there is no God for field mice in trouble. If only they had delayed for 1 minute longer, just 1 minute, just one. But then the water came and overtook him. His struggle was over. Quietly, without resistance, he let his swirl in the cool sweep of water, sinking in its softness, listening to its drowsy humming, his mind already blank. Everybody always expects mercy, compassion, but one can't argue with facts. When the field workers removed the plug, they found the field mouse inside, the fur of his chest full of glistening aluminum splinters entangled in his hair like a silver chain, his dead body intact and peaceful, and on his tiny face, that smile accusing loose teeth. So this is the story of Amos. And of course, it's a struggle that, for me, it is very similar to some of the struggles that we fight today. And I would immediately like to switch to a short piece that our actors, Shirley Gal and Ronen Babluki, will perform. And this is from Discovering Elijah, a story written by Samach Izhar. And it's about soldiers running under fire, struggling with the uncertainty of where are they going to be hurt. Shirley Gal and Ronen Babluki, please. רק לרוץ להחליש מחסנית, חוץ להדק כל הזמן בלי להפסיק, רק לרוץ להחליש מחסנית, חוץ להדק כל הזמן בלי להפסיק, רץ ויורה, run and shoot, straight into the fire, stripped from everything you are. I am nothing, only that runs and shoots. Fire, God, what's left of me? Your head is exploding, your stomach is exploding, your ears are exploding, everything exploding, afraid to raise your head, afraid to think about raising your head, falling all around you, shattering any which way, first closer, then a bit further, then very, very close, and the pieces flying, wailing, looking for you. You can already feel the place on your back where it's going to hit, and the injustice of it all, while you're stretched out, glued to the ground, and all the demons of hell are wailing around you and falling on and exploding on top of you.
Just not my head, just not my head. Such a pity of my head and just not my spine. Horrible. Horrible, and also not my shoulders. Your entire body fills with ants. What part am I ready to give up so they don't get everything and finish all of me? One leg, one hand, one eye.
Just a wailing that can drive you out of your mind and your own wailing, praying for it to end. Oh God, let it end. You can bear this even one more second, but it keeps coming more and more. It's exploding all the time.
You are placed in the middle of the impossible. It's the impossible that no one can stand. It's the unbearable that no one can stand, that you are in the middle of, lying here alone in the world, and everything on top of you.
Enough. Let it be enough already. And stop you over there. Stop you bastards. There is no place. It's not soft, this ground of sand. It has no softness and no room to hold you, or just a part of you. And the fragments of white hot iron flying at you. Doesn't care who will they eat on the way, and who will be torn into pieces. He will be torn, his flesh will be torn. Where were you? Where were you? You're here, hey?
Get up and run, man, run and escape with your life. Run and take off. No longer thinking, no longer knowing, no longer feeling or planning. Also, no longer, God, please do something, God, maybe only mother. My mom, Ima, Ummi, Mama.
That's the way. Run and shoot, straight into the fire, stripped from everything you are. I am nothing. And shoot, fire, God, what's left of me?
And up above, there is nothing of this, and all this does not exist, and all of you are nothing but a small, meaningless enterprise in this huge and mighty glowing splendor among these celebrating stars. And even if other souls passed through them just now, rising from the earth one after the other, and there is no message in the sky, and no understanding, and no mercy, and also no desire to know. They are not there for this. The skies and all the hosts, the deaths of human beings and the lives are not the business of the sky. They are there without touching us, without knowing about us. So beautiful that all shall sing Hallelujah.
Thank you. Thank you for putting in the work.
I don't hear you. Wait. There's also kind of, yes.
Yeah, now it should be working. No, thank you for putting in the work and creating a piece for us. Tell us a little bit, how is the situation where you are? How is it? It was COVID at the moment, with restrictions and everything.
Well, the truth is we are in the midst of a fourth wave, but it's not that bad because many people are vaccinated. So actually, for me, the worst wave was the wave of violence and hatred that we experienced a few weeks ago. That maybe was actually aroused by the forces that the corona opened. But the medical situation now is quite fine.
If you have your sound on, take it off because we hear a little reverb. Do you have your sound on your loudspeaker?
I think that now, is it now all right? Is it all right now?
Yeah, I think that's better now.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's good. So how is the mood in Israel at the moment? What do people think about, and artists especially?
It is very mixed because people really want to start to get free, to start doing things. And for example, our theater company, we started to perform. We already perform. We had we created a special project that is a speech exhibition that was presented in a gallery in Haifa, in the north of Israel. So the event was with an intimate audience, which was wonderful for us, but also good for the Corona situation. So we get along. It's not a crisis situation now, and it's nice that because for a year and a half we couldn't perform at all. So it's really nice that we begin to do things. But on the other hand, there is this fourth wave, and we don't know how is it going to develop.
We heard you were asked to wear mask again. Is that true, or?
A what?
You were asked to wear masks outside again?
Not outside, but inside, yes, we are. We are. Also at the university where I teach, from a situation that everything was free, we have to wear masks when we teach. And it's difficult, you know, because when you do a lot of things with breath, it is very difficult to have this blockade. But again, I don't want to complain because I know that in India, the situation is much worse. Yeah. And I think that our energies and efforts are to hope that in those places, things will get better. And in our land, this is all right. Other things are not, but this is all right now.
Are there existing connections to India from Israeli theater, from your world?
Well, yes, of course. I think I mentioned it, that the two pieces that we read and performed already. Yeah. We did in India. We hope to go there again. I had a wonderful connection with a young director who somehow found a play that I wrote in the internet and asked the permission to perform it in India. So it's a real great pleasure. So yes, we are.
Yeah. Can I interrupt, Ruth?
Sure.
That director is me.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it. You were interested in Disgust, right?
I adapted Disgust. In fact, it was the end of my director's training program with Abhishek in Bangalore with Indian Ensemble and at Rangashankara, and I wrote to you and adapted Disgust. And the idea was to question majoritarian narratives, and I was hoping to talk to you and to say thank you. It is so wonderful to have you here.
This is amazing, amazing to meet you here. It's really amazing. And I wanted to know how did it work? And just to explain to the other people, the whole idea of this play was that we go to passers-by in the street and just ask one question: what disgusts you? And it starts, you know, with things like cockroaches, hair, etc. But then it becomes very political, because people are disgusted from things that they are, ideas are, that they think that they are wrong. So it's really interesting. Let's get in touch later, and I'd like to know how was your performance.
Yes, in fact, the stage manager who let you in to this call, Shraddha Raj, she was one of the actors in the play as well. So you've now met two people who are part of your production. We'll talk about it soon.
A wonderful surprise.
That's quite stunning. We didn't know that, of course, when we asked Bruce. And I asked an innocent question: are there connections? And all of a sudden they are so close. And as we talked with Remedy Protocol earlier, when we said they're invisible connections, and to make the invisible connections visible is a part of what theater actually does, make the invisible invisible. So yeah, that's incredible. We passed another hour, and just at this moment, we came to an end of this session, and we have still Avra with us, but so goodbye in that sense to you, but stay with us. And Avra, tell us a little bit about your situation. Our talk was so wonderful, and we got so many comments, and people refer to it. So how is the situation now in Greece?
Well, the situation in Greece is not as hopeful as it used to be a couple of months ago. We are also going through the fourth wave of the pandemic, and we're very worried that we might experience another lockdown come September. But theaters have been open since June, so a lot of us are trying to go as much to the theater as we can, fearing that in the winter things might get a little worse. I think we're all getting extremely tired of this struggle between despair, loss, and trying to remain hopeful and resilient. And on my end, I've been fortunate enough to be able to produce a play last October in a live setting. But after that, I think I've been more or less building artistic and academic ammunition, thinking about what this pandemic is going to leave us with, and how we can capitalize on all these extreme losses that people have incurred in the past year and a half. So we'll see. I will be reading actually from my new collection, edited collection, entitled Staging 21st Century Tragedies, Theater, Politics, and Global Crisis, which is what kept me alive mentally and psychologically during the past year. It is a book about where crisis meets tragedy, and this is what I will try to present today. From an academic point of view, but also based on my experience of theater making in the 21st century tragedy. So if I can start, the question whether theater can alleviate suffering is anything but new. What seems more pertinent at times of crisis, as the coronavirus pandemic has so painfully revealed, is a reflection on the kind of art that will survive to recount the intertwined chronicles of loss that have so far defined the 21st century. Any communal activity, such as the theater, can be a natural booster of solidarity, reducing our fear of loneliness by laying bare essential questions that need to be addressed for the world to be less divided. That the theater is by definition political had been already pointed out by Hannah Arendt, who had argued that tragedy imitated man in his relation to others. So this book, which is soon to be published by Routledge and which I am editing, aspires to reveal some of the ways contemporary theater has responded to crisis and to provide a focused and detailed study of how the global tragedies of our century are being artistically negotiated, with 20 essays approaching the phenomenon of crisis from different pivots of analysis, that is, dramaturgy and performance, different angles, and different geographies. The mention of the word crisis conjures up images of geopolitics, wars, terrorist attacks, poverty, earthquakes, wildfires, health epidemics. The multiple afflictions stalking the third millennium, including the pandemic, migration and forced displacement, global terrorism and religious intolerance, climate change, the failure of neoliberalism, and the establishment of neo-tyrannical political and media formations all over the world have precipitated a climate of profound social and cultural instability and trauma, which may well be the material of modern tragedy. The media visualization of citizens protesting for their rights and being persecuted for it, of refugees being washed away in the sea, and of intubated patients in hospital wards is a constant and bitter reminder of pervasive tragedy. People struggling to survive in an ailing world. Crisis materializes as a collective denominator of emergency, while tragedy references the impact crisis has on individuals and entire communities. The notion of crisis, which has been perennially present in Western history and scholarship, is elastic and fluctuating, severally appropriated by various theorists in different historical and political contexts and ideologies. In ancient Greece, the term krisis was etymologically derived from the verb krining, to judge, to decide, or to pass criticism. According to Reinhard Koselleck, who offers a comprehensive historical analysis of crisis, the term had relatively clearly demarcated meanings in the spheres of law, medicine, and theology, imposing choices between stark alternatives, right or wrong, salvation or damnation, life or death. After the 18th century, the concept came to generalize the modern experience to such an extent that crisis becomes a permanent concept of history, the fundamental mode of interpreting historical time, and a structural signature of modernity. In our century, Koselleck argues, crisis is often used interchangeably with unrest, conflict, revolution, and to describe vaguely disturbing moods or situations, because, quote, every one of such uses is ambivalent, Koselleck advises us to be wary of using the term, which with its metaphorical flexibility has gained in importance, entered into everyday language and become a central catchword. Today, he explains, there is virtually no area of life that has not been examined and interpreted through the concept of crisis with its inherent demand for decisions and choices. Surely, as a catchphrase, crisis has always been deeply politicized, used as a way for political players to terrorize, castigate, and ultimately prescribe specific agendas and policies in the name of the public good. Therefore, one needs to consider that crisis often operates as a media buzzword, as well as a political strategy that fosters a constructed climate of fear to deflate the real problems perpetuated in capitalist societies. That being said, crisis should be also viewed essentially as an indicator of the need for decisions and choices. It looks both to the past and to the future and entails a significant degree of interpretation, a lens through which one hopes change can occur. One of the most eminent crisis theorists today, Janet Reutemann, regards crisis as a non-locus from which to claim access to both history and knowledge of history. It is therefore not a diagnostic of history as such. Under the rubric of crisis, Reutemann claims events are distinguished and signified. They achieve empirical status as history and hence become legible to us. Or, as Andrew Simon Gilbert maintains, crisis is a call to take action, to adopt a different perspective, to see something revealed to us, or even to simply be aware of the crisis and to pay attention. In each case, there is a possibility of a failure or an injustice, which is narrated through the description of crisis and thereby imposes an obligation to perform. Failure can occur either by ignoring the crisis, failing to comprehend its significance, or by pursuing their own course of response. Eventually, every crisis brings us face to face with our moral responsibility for playing along in a series of failures that have caused suffering and injustice. Where does contemporary crisis meet tragedy? As a protracted historical and experiential condition, as Reutemann argues, crisis approximates established notions of tragedy as a condition of the human predicament. From antiquity to the 20th century, the idea of the tragic has been related to conditions of crisis and societal political transformation, as well as to new forms and revised norms of artistic expression. As a genre, crisis theater incorporates, interrogates, and subverts some of the aesthetics of classical tragedy, a structure that contains a peak of tension, a series of reversals and revelations, leading or not leading to recognition, a thematic preoccupation with human suffering and healing, enlightenment and knowledge, and a general emphasis on the interplay between human responsibility and forces outside of ourselves that govern our fate. Tragedies have always recorded the collective experience of great historical transitions. As far as artistic expression is concerned, Hans T.S. Lehmann regards theater as tragedy's lifeblood, but only in as much as it offers resistance to its own conventions. Lehmann conceives of the tragic as a figuration of transgression, a frontier which separates the possible from the land of the impossible. The observation that tragedy counters ideology and offers an antidote to the everyday flattening out of reality, which only conceals the perplexity of consciousness, is well worth noting since, quote, within its own realm, tragedy is immune to the objection that it does not take a political position. What Lehmann emphatically explains is that although tragedy as a literary and dramatic genre may feel obsolete, the tragic experience, however modulated, returns again and again. In my understanding, modern tragedy as a contemporary theater genre addresses the common understanding of the tragic as a human condition of extreme suffering, points to the structure of classical tragedy as a formal paradigm of framing this suffering, and invites an understanding of contemporary performance of crisis as an experience of ideological engagement, echoing the involvement of the demos in the conception, production, and spectators' experience of classical tragedy. Crisis theater is the theater of modern tragedy in that it invites spectators to reconsider their position as both agents and victims of the cultural tribulations of 21st century identity, assuming the role of an engaged body of citizens that will eventually have to pronounce its judgment. In this respect, contemporary forms of political theater employ participatory approaches and agonistic strategies that revisit the function of the ancient chorus. By entering the public sphere, crisis theater is inspired by the democratic practices that characterizes performances of ancient tragedy as events of political import, in which the public voice was represented by the chorus. Thus, modern tragedy constitutes a performative form that reveals the apprehension of a common human vulnerability, to remember Judith Butler, and stimulates an awareness of the social and an ideological context that aggrandizes it. Although in many 21st century dramaturgies, the afflicted subject is still portrayed as an archetype of human suffering, recalling the ancient Greek tragic heroes, the hydraulics of affliction are no longer arbitrary and run deep into the cultural, ideological, and economic structures of modern societies. Whereas in classical tragedy, the message is life-affirming, showing us that there are lessons to be learned through recognition, and that one's suffering may eventually abate through catharsis. The modern tragedies depicted in the performances of our century are not salvific. From a secular sensibility, the devastation is absolute, and the horror is often beyond remedy. Furthermore, where ancient tragedy puts the plight of a significant individual, mostly of the noble class, at the heart of the problem, modern tragedies tend to depict the collective calamities of entire societies, of which the individual is just another hapless victim. The crisis-struck character is no longer prey to a nefarious divine agency, but implicated in the relentless maneuvering of global politics and the unethics of capitalism, carrying highly precarious national, cultural, and civic identities, fluid, perilous, and subject to manipulative, profit-gaining practices. Such tragedies are no less tragic, but are anything but private, grand, or cathartic. As spectators of these narratives, rather than feeling purged, we are faced with the open-endedness of suffering, the bitter awareness that the moment of crisis, in Aristotle's terms, repeats itself ad infinitum. It may be that notions of destiny, human frailty, dignity in the face of failure, agency and powerlessness are at the heart of both ancient and modern tragedies. In recent dramaturgies, however, the conventions of representation are daring and cross-disciplinary, relying less on fable and plot, more on the immediacy and viscerality of the viewing experience, and often on active audience participation. Conspicuously or covertly political, these narratives are sometimes chaotic, linguistically complex, and stylistically eclectic, mixing text with different media, such as digital projections, dance, lectures, film, or live music. There are certainly times when one feels the necessity of tragedy waning, as clear-headed secularism renders any belief in divine providence irrelevant. But tragedy, as a genre or category of aesthetics, has always re-emerged and has been reincarnated time and time again. The viability need for tragedy as a genre today are, of course, under scrutiny and debate. Must human suffering be put into an artistic form to become more bearable? This may indeed be the case, because real life does not speak for itself. It has to be turned into words, stories, and plots. It is only when these are lifted out of the unstoppable flow that they hold our protracted attention. Tragedy is a way of honoring and allaying ghosts, collective as well as personal, a means of freeing the future from the past. At the same time, there is always logic in tragedy and sense of cause and effect that puts both facts and ideas into perspective. And in this sense, tragedy is a means of enlightenment, which further to revealing the extremities of human nature and emotions makes the notion of consequence more concrete. Perhaps part of the theater's interest in tragedy originates in the opportunity to experience the extremity of anguish and perceive the unthinkable from a safe distance. This opportunity is intertwined with the pleasure of the spectator that the semiotician Anne Huberstelt refers to. The way theater, which shows everything the spectator fears, does so after it has stained, put a distance, and veiled the unthinkable by kind of negation. What one sees is the other who suffers, and there is pleasure in the fact that it is someone else, but there is pleasure also in the fact that it is not true. The pleasure of theater is also the pleasure of believing for 1 minute that death is imaginary. In contemporary performance, this pleasurable distance, the complacent consumption of human suffering, notably that of the other, is renegotiated. Even if our bourgeois complacency will never be entirely obliterated, our pleasure is in the very least compromised. At any moment, the suffering of others can become our suffering. To conclude, theater, American director Peter Sellers pointed out in a recent talk, can look at catastrophes and say there is a message. Sellers also insists that we learn by coming through a terrible experience together. And in this respect, tragedy is an action of healing. In examining the tragic in the fields of history and the theory of the theater, our book approaches crisis through an understanding of the existential aspect of the tragic condition, finding one's position in today's world, and the political aspect, the process of constructing a civic and collective identity, which marks a break from established forms of power. Written during the long and dreary months of the ongoing global pandemic, the book ultimately reflects on the impact and awareness modern tragedies can produce. The common representational paradigms of tragedy, where character, stature, and high emotion are prevalent, may now seem dated. What new forms does modern tragedy take to speak to the audiences today? And I would like to dedicate this text to all the victims of the coronavirus pandemic in India. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Avra. So we have 2 minutes left. So you think it's decision time? The crisis is asking us to make a decision.
Absolutely. And art has to become a vehicle for that. And in a way, theater making and theater production needs to facilitate those unrepresented voices and the voices of the people that suffered most during the pandemic, to be able to come forth and ask of the world to start paying attention and heed to what is happening in our climate, in our societies, in our political context. So yes, I think it is time for big decisions. And I'm sure initiatives such as this are there to bring us all closer together and to connect more with that imperative.
We had Guillermo Calderon from Chile, and he said, I'm thinking about even writing comedies, that I'm not good at it, but perhaps this is what we need. Do you think what we need is a reinterpretation of tragedy? Is that your suggestion?
I think a lot of this pent-up anxiety and loss is going to come through the writing, whether through a new form of tragedy or comedy or whatever, as long as we're truthful to what we have experienced and be willing to share the extremity of that. I think it will be meaningful art. So yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I mean, it's the great Peter Sondy, the German writer, also on tragedy. They said you have to imagine theater is like Heracles. He's chained to a rock, and the eagle comes and eats him up. Like the commercial theater is like eating out the liver, or and he says we have to free theater, whoever it is, or maybe it was political oppression, or the monarchs, the king who held theater in chains. And he said we need to actually reinvent, we need to rethink, and that is the mission of each generation of theater makers, to free that from that chained rock and the suffering, the constant suffering of barely surviving, as so many artists, especially Indian artists, that we did day by day, and their livers are being eaten up, by the vultures. So really, thank you. I think it was a fitting, good ending, pointing towards a tragedy. We live in tragic times. I think even so, it is no longer made by the gods. It is not fate. It has not been inevitable. It's been man-made. This has also been pointed out in the last 24 hours. It's a failure of the humans, actually, and not the short-sightedness of the gods So it is a truly a situation where we have to, as Ruth pointed out, make a decision, and we all hope that it's the right one. The COVID crisis perhaps is only a dress rehearsal for much bigger ecological crisis to come. Even these tragic times we live in could get much more tragic, even though they are very, very tragic for many who did not survive, especially in India, 3 million. But for the planet, I think there is a real danger. So we moved now into our last session already. We have Tanvi and Abhishek with us. Maybe you all can